So a few things I'd say in a bit more detail about tools and sort of how they work, I think, in client organizations. So the first thing is consistency. So what I've often seen in organizations I've worked with is that actually within different parts of the business, within perhaps different categories, they would take a different approach to looking at SKU productivity or pricing, or price ladders, and category management teams sitting in silos that don't necessarily talk to each other. And the idea of having tools that can work consistently across those silos with a very consistent approach, I think is really, really, really important. And what we also see, and I'll talk a bit more about this later, is that you have pricing teams who are taking one approach to understanding price and understanding how cannibalization of SKUs happen. You have a merchandising team, though, who is looking very separately at SKU mix. And you might have a separate team that's looking at promotional activity. And those people don't talk to each other. And indeed, there might also be a fourth team, a demand forecasting team. Now, I know one big UK retailer, UK's biggest retailer, in fact, where they have a demand forecasting team that sits separately to price. But kind of, well, isn't price rather important to driving demand? And it wouldn't be kind of sensible if the models they used in the pricing team were exactly the same models that they used in demand forecasting. And that's not the case. They use completely separate models with different assumptions. And not surprisingly, they get results that don't add up and are inconsistent. So by having a sort of uniform set of tools in the organization, I think you get kind of much better joined up thinking. This idea of scalable is very important as well, because typically analytics teams in retailers, all the retailers I've worked with, are hugely undersized. And it's impossible to touch all of the categories that you'd want to, and certainly not at the frequency that you'd want to. And by having tools that are scalable and perhaps even automatable, it means you get a lot of leverage from your teams. I know major UK retailers where even a retailer like Waitrose, which is the 5th largest grocery retailer in the UK, they only have an analytics team of 12 people. And so to be able to have the impact that you'd want for that analytics team, you've got to sort of give them this kind of exoskeleton, which is these kind of scalable tools. I think the other thing that's important for me is speed of decision making. And as I said, when I began my career 30 years ago, the sort of pain of building these kind of models was so immense that you can only ever do it once a year. Now we have these tools, there's no limit really to the frequency with which you can refresh data and start thinking about a pricing refresh or a SKU mix refresh. The only constraint is an operational one and working with suppliers. But it also means there's the ability when you want to analyze at speed. Say there's a new set of SKUs being introduced and they're performing less well than you would have anticipated. You can analyze those just in a day and feed back what's been happening and why. Say there's been a period of unseasonably warm weather, which we don't often get in London, but occasionally we have a warm spell. What's that mean in terms of SKU mix and pricing? And these tools enable you to analyze in the same way that business as usual analyze, so the same set of tools, a consistent way of working, but with a much, much faster way of getting to a conclusion than if you sort of had an ad hoc approach and just started building the models from scratch without the understanding that the tools give you in the first place. I think probably one of the other things that I think we heard in the last presentation is about change management. And perhaps one of the things I learned at Accenture that is very technology-centric, as you might imagine, is actually businesses work around, particularly retailers, work around technology, not technology around the processes of the organization. And a retailer can only really work as effectively as its ERP allows. You can't have a promotion unless you can code it into the ERP system. And this idea of having tools that embed new ways of working into the organization, if you embed the tools, then the new ways of working goes with it. So it's a kind of Trojan horse for different ways of thinking. And I think one of the interesting things to me is cross-silo working and the way in which these new tools are creating cross-silo collaboration. And I think we've reached the point now where the analytics is sufficiently powerful that we can literally say, is it better to invest in pricing or promotion? Is it literally better to invest in SKU rationalization or more money spent on marketing? But there is no organizational opportunity to do that as stands, because that's not how businesses are organized. But by beginning to use these tools in a consistent way across the organization, you can actually kind of get people to change that organizational design and say, well, the tool is able to say, is it better to invest in price or SKU mix or promotion or marketing? And actually, that is the Trojan horse for establishing change management in the organization. So I think these tools are actually changing how businesses work, not that you want tools to reflect the status quo for how businesses work already. These tools have to be very, very easy to use. And I don't mean this in any kind of disrespectful way, but certainly most of my clients have highly leveraged teams where they have a lot of junior and not very experienced people in the analytics team. And often, to be honest, there's a range of quality of people simply because of what's affordable in terms of the kind of schools you can hire folks from. By having tools that are really easy to use with highly sophisticated analytics, but which are embedded in the tools, perhaps in a hidden layer, that enables a lot of leverage from small teams and perhaps less sophisticated analytics people than the folks that actually coded the tools in the first place. And then just finally, the great thing I'd say about tools is that they can incorporate new data and refresh. So one of the most important things, obviously, in the machine learning context is being able to ingest new data and refresh the model. If you're building models in a very ad hoc way, which is the analysts sat using R, building models in a highly bespoke kind of way, that's hard to do. You're almost kind of rebuilding the model afresh every time. If you've got tools, it can ingest another week of data, it can automatically refresh the model, it can give you a new set of coefficients in that model, and it's automatically updated. And tools can just run in the background. They can ingest data automatically and rerun the model, changing price elasticity, changing how the SKUs are cannibalizing each other on the basis of the latest week of data. So I do think if you want to move to a world of sort of adaptive modeling, automated modeling, you need to have tools that do this rather than sort of having analysts working more